I always like to look at what we want to keep doing and what we want to let go of or do differently.
You need to have that positive self-talk. You need to understand your strong side and weak side.
This is more than a marathon. These are decades of the journey that you have had working and leading teams.
I think it's people. I can come up with lots of things, but I think it's people.
Welcome back to Still Evolving. I'm Dr. Amy Athey, and before I bring in today's guest, I want to spend a few minutes on something I keep seeing in executives I work with, because it shapes almost everything else and how they perform under pressure. There is a quiet assumption that runs through senior executive cultures, which is that the job of the executive in hard moments is to look composed, hold the room steady, keep your face calm, and do not let whatever is happening inside of you show on the outside. That instinct gets reinforced everywhere, from boardrooms to earnings calls to the way leaders are coached early in their careers. Or on the surface, it looks like what they believe to be as strengths. What I've come to see, though, is that it sets up a contradiction that ends up costing leaders far more than they realize, because hiding emotion and regulating emotion are not the same thing. This is what I teach. Hiding emotion is a performance, one that in the room people can see. Regulation, however, is an internal capacity that determines what you actually have access in the moment when the decision needs to be made. When these two things get confused, leaders end up getting praised for not the composure that they actually possess, but the gap that they begin to rely on, that performative nature. And that actually shows up later, not in a way that they hope. Actually, it can impede their judgment and their decision-making and clarity. And it can take a toll on them being able to sustain that performance day in and day out. This is what I write about in my upcoming book, Moment Ready, where I share with you the 4 capacities that performers use to show up in moments that matter. The first of these capacities is composure, which is what I really want to talk about here, and more specifically define that for you. Many leaders have been taught a version of it that they find is no longer serving them. Composure is not about the absence of emotion or intensity, and it was never meant to be. High-stakes events by design are activating. Your mind is responding to the significance of what's around you, and the response physiologically is part of what helps prepare you and helps you execute in that moment. The work is not to flatten that signal. The work is to be able to use your energy to help you show up in the range that best helps you in that moment. That optimal range helps you understand and use that emotion for your response and not be controlled by it. And it's a skill that can be learned rather than something that somebody is just born with. There's a second piece of this that often goes unnoticed in executive settings, and I want to name it because it shows up constantly in the work that I do. You can fall out of range in the opposite direction too. A leader can look settled, but when they are actually just disengaged or unmotivated, they may sound measured, but they are underpowered and the present as calm when what is really happening. And they may be perceived as calm, but what is really happening in that moment is that they may be going numb in order to protect themselves from the weight of that moment that matters. That state is harder to spot from the outside because nothing appears unraveled, but the cost lands in the same space, in which the quality of the thinking, the connection that a leader might have is undermined from that suppression of energy. What the moment is asking for is both. When this pattern hardens across a leadership team, the cost stops being personal and it starts being organizational. Leaders and teams learn to read the surface rather than the substance. Decisions get made in unclear conditions that the leader has not honestly named to themselves. And the fear of being seen as anything less than steady starts to shape what gets discussed in the room and what gets buried before it ever even gets there. Over time, that pattern shapes culture more than any stated value will ever will. And the internal cost that the leader has been carrying becomes the cost the business absorbs in the form of slower decisions, thinner trust, and a team that has learned to hide alongside with them. I'm bringing this up today because the environment leaders are operating in right now makes the hiding instinct stronger, not weaker. The data is incomplete, the stakes are climbing, and the historical patterns executives used to lean on are not matching what they are actually seeing right in front of them. Under those conditions, the appearance of certainty feels more valuable than ever, and the temptation to perform composure rather than to build it grows accordingly. That is precisely when the cost of mismanaged internal experience becomes the most expensive, both for the leader and the business that they are responsible for, and is the reason I wanted to have today's conversation. My guest today is Michael Nevski, and Michael is somebody I wanted to have on for a while because he sits at an unusual intersection. He is the Director of Global Insights for Visa's Business and Economic Insights team, where he partners directly with Visa's chief economist to shape how consumer research gets integrated into Visa's economic forecasts and strategic direction. That means he is spending his days inside the exact problem most executives are wrestling with right now, which is how to make sound decisions when the consumer landscape is shifting faster than the data can keep up with. Before Visa, Michael was at Charles Schwab, where he led the first path to purchase customer journey analysis the firm had ever done, go-to-market strategy for their robo-advisory products, and built tracking systems that connected media exposure to actual digital behavior and conversion. He has also done the work of building remote meeting capabilities into client service delivery, which feels obvious now, but was genuinely ahead of its time when he was doing it. Across 3 decades, he has worked with global financial institutions, consumer product companies, manufacturing leaders, and data-driven organizations. And what is consistent across all of this is his ability to turn complicated information into decisions a leadership team can actually act on. His academic background is an MBA in marketing and brand management from the University of Arizona, and a degree in economics and finance from St. Petersburg State University of Finance and Economics, which is part of why the conversation we are about to have moves so easily between the rigor of the data side and the very human side of how executives actually behave under pressure. Michael, welcome to Still Evolving. I'm really glad you are here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amy. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm really excited about our conversation today. As we both know, as a former college level athlete, you have several principles, especially when it comes to mental toughness in sports. It's commitment, it's a confidence, control, challenge mindset. And what I observe that those principles apply across the board, especially at the executive level, at the leadership level in the corporate America, and even not only large companies, but the small companies. And the reason why, because we're living in a fast-changing and fast-paced times, lots of disruption by technology, geopolitical events. So our mindset is constantly needs to be adjusted, it constantly needs to be ready for those new challenges or being challenged. And so what I see that commitment and confidence especially, right, they kind of changing in terms of really focusing on what is important, right? So when you commit to something, you pick that goal and really trying to dedicate, I wouldn't call 100%, but as much resources as possible. You also, yes, fast-changing priorities, but same time, as a leader or being in a leadership position, you need to exert that confidence. Same like on the court or in kind of a competition where you know your stuff, you know what you're doing, and when you're in a boardroom or when you're in an executive conversations, you need to show that confidence, because confidence builds the trust and builds that a bridge of people understanding or kind of trusting you because you know what you're talking about. And also having that control, because in a fast-paced changing environment like generative AI or different changes in an economy, right? keeping calm, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
showing that confidence is a confidence, but also being that control and being in control of the situation is very, very important, because people sometimes can panic, can react to it, right? Same like in sports. And last one, but not least, is challenging mindset, right? So
Mm-hmm.
um, it's like pretty much being and working under the pressure, right? So, but looking at those moments as opportunities, right, to learn and
Mm-hmm.
grow. That means interacting with your peers, interacting with your clients, business partners, and not pretty much being like, okay, I'm again being crushed or being pressured for something, but look for it's a kind of a glass half full, half empty, right? So looking at that as an opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
come out on top, like in a fight, like in a competition, where you
Mm-hmm.
already have all the tools, but you need to build a strategy. How you going to beat your opponent? How you going to figure out and be successful in this business situation? Same idea. So that's why overall, in the last 20, 30 years, I think this whole field became much more dynamic, much more diverse.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, we're getting more opportunities to be successful. Yes, there's a lot of disruption, but same time, we're becoming more efficient, more proficient, right? So, and because of that, because of the technologies enabling us, if you have a curious mindset, if you are looking for opportunities to learn and improve and grow, you will be successful and at a higher
Mm-hmm.
probability than you used to be before.
Mm-hmm. I really appreciate that under pressure. You highlight the role of maintaining one's composure in the midst of that challenge, right? And sometimes our mindset and our perspective we take on what's before us influences our reactions, right? If we're thinking like this is a tremendous threat before us, well, physiologically, our bodies are going to respond to it as a threat. Your heart rate's going to increase, for example. The stress hormones are going to flood. The amygdala in the brain, the emotional center of the brain, is going to flood. Perhaps the frontal lobe and our ability to analyze, to organize, and to make those strategic plans or decisions. So one's ability, the skill to remain composed, is so critical to be able to have clarity and thought, the ability to connect and to take that courageous action. What have you seen in leaders who are able to effectively remain composed in those pressurous moments? And what's the dark side? Like, what doesn't work?
Well, it doesn't work. That's a very good point. Um, I still feel that because it's a human nature, right? And that's why
Mm-hmm.
sometimes teams lose or athletes lose or something. If you become a little bit overconfident, what I observed on that with time, if people stay in a leadership position for a very long time and they're not changing their environment or changing, in a sense, teams, moving to different verticals, but doing over and over again something, if they don't become bored, they become overconfident, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
what in the corporate America, again, we're talking about the corporate America, not sports. And that's where there's a chance or sometimes flaws of being overestimating the situation, underestimating, situations, underestimating your opponents' needs, and become more redundant in a sense in terms of repeating what you already know. I'm very confident. I know my stuff. Instead of continue learning, because people stop learning and start pretty much pushing their vision, their agenda, because I've been doing it for so long. I know what's working, what's not, but things are changing. Environment is changing. People are
Mm-hmm.
changing. Preferences are changing. Markets changing, right? So technology is changing. And if people don't get quickly this kind of a rate of adaptation or adapt to that environment, they become obsolete. And that's what's not working because it's a human nature. That's why I truly believe that in the corporate world, you need to come up with constant challenges, right? So after 2, 3 years, you need to mix it up, right? They do something else, right? So not just stay in one line of business for 25, 30 years without any challenge, because again, you're becoming too narrow focused because you rely only on your present and past experience in one field, in a sense. So that's what
Absolutely
is not working.
It does remind me of like the sport metaphor, right? Where when you are trying to get stronger and you're going to the gym and you're lifting, initially it is incredibly challenging, and yet with a little bit of challenge, we are reinforced. I mean, the dopamine is released for us to keep going back, and then we succeed, meet that goal, and we get a little bit of a break. We kind of it's a little bit easier. Like we can go back and hit those reps, and it's okay, right? But to your point, over time, how we're internally motivated, that level of comfortability can turn on us quickly, where then we just kind of settle in. And, I don't know if I want to go back and up the weight game, if you will, add the extra plate and keep pushing. But I appreciate how in the leadership or cognitive performance domain, how we vary perhaps where we're challenged with a new team or a new project or perhaps even a whole new industry. It can really help us continue to grow and evolve. Absolutely. Michael, you mentioned briefly your history in sport. I love learning from people's experiences and journeys along the way. All of us have our stories of influence and where we have had, I too was a college athlete, where we had these experiences and we were able to kind of take away what works. And hopefully as we continue to evolve, we continue to do so. Like mentors, colleagues, peers, leaders that you're working with now, you learn from, you take away something from them and your experience with them. And maybe you let go of that which is no longer working. But going back to your earliest of upbringing, would you be willing to share back kind of some of those core lessons? And then the flip side, I always like to take a look at like what we want to keep doing and what we want to let go of or do differently from your upbringing in sport, how it's influenced you today, and also what you've learned to let go of that perhaps doesn't serve any longer.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So from my upbringings, playing volleyball at the college level, I think this kind of a preparation for each match, right? Same in your professional career. We know some techniques athletes do, and I'm going to try to bring some analogies, right? So that mental toughness, right, in terms of visualization and a mental rehearsal when you're ready to go and present to the client, right? When you're putting some kind of use case together and you need to be in an important meeting. So you're interviewing for a job. You need to prepare, not just wing it. You need to really visualize the outcome, how you're going to present, what you're going to say, rehearse stuff, right? So then also focus on positive, right? Yes, there is a kind of a self-talk like athletes do. Let's say if we take the tennis, for example, and my daughter used to be a nationally ranked tennis player with national endorsements from Wilson and Prince a long time ago when she was a child, I would say, right? So teenager. And you need to have that positive self-talk. You need to understand your strong side and weak side of things, right? Where you need to bump up in terms of, or maybe lean more on certain aspects of your experience or presentation or knowledge. So also goal settings, right? So pretty much what are you trying to accomplish out of this meeting? Same like you're going into this competition. What is your realistic goal here? Do you want to beat everybody? Do you want to kind of get some scores, right? So maybe it's well, whatever it is, right? So um, also make sure, like I said, preparation and visualization. It's also like pre-performance routines in a sense before going into the match, like Djokovic or some others, right? They actually do certain routines, warming up, stretching, whatever it is. Same idea here. Okay, get your stuff ready, get your deck together, analyze the business case or know your facts you're going to present, stuff like that. Again, I'm just bringing that analogy, but in general, what our I would say athletic past helps us that kind of a toughness of never give up, right? I bet, I mean, you probably have the same thing, right? So because we former athletes, we have that idea of not only just beating the competition at any cost, but being smart and shrewd about it, but at the same time understanding our values as professionals, as athletes, right? Knowing our strengths and weaknesses. And that's what helps us not to panic, not to charge at it, right? So just because, but really have a strategy. That's the one thing, right? So now I want to kind of transition real quick to the second part of your question. What is working, what is not, right? So I think we talk about like that preparation training. Same idea here. You need to know the topic you're presenting or your career, your skill set. That means you need to have that natural curiosity. You need to continue learning regardless of your age, regardless of your career stage. If you stop learning, if you stop developing your skills, practicing, again, from sports, you should be saying to yourself, I'm done here. I need to go and find some other passion or do something else. Because in that case, it's like you stop practicing your sport, right? You say, okay, I'm the champion of the world. That's it. So I can give up because I'm the best. No, it's a constant process, right? So, and you need to work at it. And that's what's working in a sense for us as professionals. But constantly learning, constantly building that knowledge, building a relationship across the organizations and clients and stuff. So building our presence in the industry. What's not working probably, I would say, what I learned that, for example, if my shot, like in volleyball, serve or something is not working, right? So assess that and understand where you're falling behind, what needs to change. Do you need to practice more on that serve, or maybe change the type of serve you're doing instead of jumping, maybe do it off the ground, on the ground, right? Stuff like that. So, and same thing in business, right? So, we need to assess more of our strengths and weaknesses and understand what we need to change and stop doing, right? So let's say if you subject matter expert in certain field, like in my case, in data monetization, people come to you and ask for your advice. Again, if you understand that, yes, you have very good knowledge and you can advise them and tell them, in a sense, how to approach that, what to do, what else is missing. But sometimes people have business partners have very special needs in terms of how they want to approach that situation. You need to stop pushing your messaging, in a sense, or knowledge, and sometimes start listening to people and say, yeah, they have a very unique solution or very unique need, and you need to go back and reassess or maybe even research, learn, and adjust, right? So, and then help them out by coming back with exactly what they need, not what you know. Again, I'm generalizing. I have some examples I'm happy to share, but that's what we need to do because, again, back to our original discussion, when people stay in the leadership positions for a long time, they become overconfident. And then they say, I know how it works. This is what you need to do. Instead of listening to business partners or clients, well, exactly to really understand where they're coming from and what they really need. So same with sports, right? So if this one is not working, maybe it's not exactly your best thing you're going to do, right? So, I don't know, you're not going to put a lot of velocity on this ball, come up with a different approach, how you're going to tackle this problem, but have a competitive serve in a sense, you see? So that's why I'm.
Absolutely. Yeah, the power comes not just in the reflection, but the adaptation that follows, and being able to reflect on maybe what is working you want to keep doing. Like I said earlier, what is something that you want to do differently given the data before you? I want to come back and highlight the role of preparation and what you talked about. Certainly there's preparation and understanding your performance domain. Like in volleyball, perhaps it was your offensive play or your specific call of where you're serving on different defenses. In private industry and leading, perhaps like you mentioned, it's you need to know your stats, or you need to know your messaging and your deck, and or perhaps you've rehearsed mentally the conversation that you're having with leadership around and how you're framing the ask that you're putting out there. But there's another component besides just the performance domain expertise. And this is what we saw. And certainly it sounds like you and your daughter were exposed to in the sport environment, which I think we're now starting to understand and apply more in private industry and leadership, is that preparation is not just the what do I know, but how do I want to show up? And we referred to it as mental skills in the beginning, but there's a whole host of skills, right? Like what you're saying to yourself about yourself, your inner coach that you referenced, how you make sense of what you're going into. Is this threatening? Is it challenging? How you're regulating that energy and staying composed, we talked about as well. And there's different tools you can do for that preparation, the mental, the relational, the emotional preparation, if you will. In addition to the performance skills, right? Like it used to be just X's and O's out there on the pitch. And now we realize all that goes into the human showing up to execute a specific performance. It truly is holistic. And I appreciate you diving into all the different ways and the considerations that we need to have in our preparation. I wanted to wrap, Michael, in talking a bit about acknowledging that this is more than a marathon, more than an ultra marathon. These are decades, right, of the journey that you have had working and leading teams. And I'm curious, what helps you sustain it? Like, is there an immediate takeaway that we can have, our audience can take away with them, an immediate and actionable strategy, a tool, something you do in your daily or even weekly routine that has helped you sustain this journey?
I think it's people. I can come up with lots of things, but I think it's people. And I just want to refer back to your previous comments you just made about that kind of how you appear, right? So same I kind of quote at the beginning. In business, my creator, I want to learn about you, my business partner. And that icebreaker at the beginning, or when you're reaching out, being human is very important. Mm-hmm. Very often executives start a conversation without almost like hi and bye, just let's go into this, right? Good morning, everybody's here. Let's jump into this, right? Instead of pretty much being a little bit human. I know we're all short for time, we're all busy, have multiple priorities, under pressure, busy days, but still acknowledging that we're all humans, right? How's your day today? Oh, good to see you. Stuff like that. That's very important, right? So now going back, and that's how you appear, right? And instead of being intimidating, the person is very knowledgeable, experienced, and high position. Try to build that trust, try to build that relationship. And that's what's called inspiring leadership, right? When you actually have all those tools in your toolbox, and the human side especially, that's very important. But to answer your question, it's about the people. One of the VPs at my company, who is fairly young and inexperienced, he recently told me, "You are an enigma to me," and especially millennials, they're still learning, because he goes like, "You go around the company, you're helping people, you're building a relationship, and your networking is great, but it's like I don't understand. What about like focus only on the day-to-day stuff?" And I try to explain that while you need to care of the basis, right? You need to still win, you need to still scoring, but you need to build a relationship with people you work with, and how you build that by being human, but also being useful, right? Being in a position where you support your business partners, you support your clients, and people come back to you not just because you're networking, but because you're providing value to them. You being human,
Yes.
and you providing the value of your knowledge, of your expertise. You helping them to solve the problems, because people are not looking, if you remember from those NBA cases, buying a drill. They're looking for the hole in the wall, right? So
Yes.
the drill solves that problem. So, but really, it's about a hole, not about a drill. We go to Home Depot. So, and that understanding needs to be taught, especially with younger generations, because they're sometimes very much about the careers, and they ready to walk over people or don't care about anything else but just their career. And being that human and building relationship is what's keep me going, and natural curiosity of how business is evolving, having a passion, because very often also people treat careers as just very practical, very rational kind of approach. But not being emotional, but being passionate is very, very important. And that's where you become very successful in a sense, because you're helping people coming back at you and to you and at you, and asking for more, or building those alliances, and lots of wonderful things can come up. And that's what it is, because every chapter, I don't want to talk too much about it, but every chapter, every stage of my professional career, it's something new, something wonderful, something exciting, opportunity to learn new skills, opportunity to meet new people, opportunity to go to new places. So, and that's what excites me about. So, because journey is always, don't be set so too much in your ways, right? So kind of, okay, I got this and this is great. I get a paycheck in a sense or something. No, don't treat that. Treat that as a kind of a wonderful journey, yellow brick road, right? So, in a sense,
Yes.
and like a fairy tale, right? So something, and be positive about it. Something wonderful is waiting for you around the corner. Just keep going, right? Keep doing what you're doing, because you're great. That's a self-talk, self-confidence, in the sense of like being prepared for the match. That you know your stuff. You're a great person. You treat people well. You keep going, and that's what makes people successful, instead of just being kind of more negative, more this, more that. So be open to it. So be open to know what is coming.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those helpful reminders. Indeed, the connections we have with the people. I was reminded by a coach who always used to repeat herself that when we take care of those around us, take care of the team, the individual acknowledgments will take care of themselves. And I love that focus, how we can connect for not just resilience, but performance as well. Michael, thank you for being with me here today on Still Evolving. Grateful to have you, and look forward to more conversations in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Amy. Thank you very much for having me.